Welcome back to a new video. Today I'm going to be showing you guys 4 ways that's going to help you get out of sample block, get out of beat block, and just generally improve your workflow. These are some methods that I've been using lately. They've helped me a bunch, and yeah, let's get straight into it. Okay, so the first technique I'm going to show you guys is taking chords from other songs and manipulating them, turning them into your own. It might sound like I'm saying just rip off some chords from a different song. I'm not saying that, and I'm going to show you what I mean and how I do it personally. So the song that I'm going to use as an example is Come and See Me by Party Next Door and Drake. It's a very simple 2-chord progression, which makes it obviously super easy to turn into something different. So the chords for this song are E minor 7 and D minor 9. I'll just play those on the piano now so you can hear it, and I'll record it in so you can do some stuff with it afterwards. Obviously just doing this would be copying and just kind of not as creative as you want to be. You want to make it your own. So the first thing I do is put it in a different key so it's not sounding exactly the same. So let's pitch it down by 3 or 4 semitones. Let's go 3 and let's see what that sounds like now. The original song is in A minor, which is all white keys, which is a bit more of a happy scale to be in. Shifting it down, as you can see, is put a few dark black keys in here, which gives it a bit of a darker tone. And the second thing you can do to make it your own and make it more unique is change the chord inversions. So these chords aren't inverted at all. These are just the standard chords. So let's just mess around with it until we find something that we like. Let's bring the 2 middle notes up in both of the chords. Bring that up an octave. Just makes it a lot more wide in terms of the frequency range that we're hitting. That sounds a little bit too high, so I'm going to bring it down an octave. Now what I'm going to do next is push some of the notes back a little bit so it's a little bit more strummed. And let's also add a few extra notes in here. Okay, so that's the first technique. It's great for getting ideas started. And now we've got the basis for a sample and we can move on to some other techniques that I'm going to show you guys. Something I sometimes struggle with when making samples is figuring out what to add on top. I'll get to a point where I know the sample needs other things, but I'm just not sure what to add. So this is where making a sample stack stash comes in. So essentially what I'll do when making samples, if there's certain elements that I like, I'll bounce out the stem. Maybe it's a little counter melody I added, an accent, a perk loop, a texture, something like that. And I've created a folder where I'll save all of those into. I'll make sure I label the tempo and the key so it's easy to reuse. And then what I'll do is drop those back on top of new samples. So essentially you're just reusing your own work. So let me give you an example right now. The progression we just made is in F sharp minor. So what I'm going to do is go to my stack stash. I've just made it here. I've made it available inside FL Studio as well. And you see I've got drums, effects, piano, Rhodes, strings, synths, vocals. You can do whatever you want, set it up however you want to. But I'm thinking let's add like a Rhodes little textural element. So I only got 2 in here. It's kind of something I've started doing recently, so I haven't got too many sounds, but I'm building on it. Every time I make a sample, I'm adding something new. I'm gonna switch it to 80 so that's in the right tempo. I'm gonna pitch it up by 1. First thing I'm gonna do is reverse it, and also let's pitch it down an octave. So there you go, straight away, it's an element that you've added on top super quickly, super efficiently, and it sounds really good. So let's just copy that across. Let's put it in a mixer channel. First thing I'm going to do is add a bandpass EQ. After that, let's add a reverb. I'm going to make it pretty heavy so it's super drowned out. I've just changed the original piano sound to a different one just because I like this one a lot better. I'm also going to process the original piano now too. Start off with a J37. Next I'll add an EQ, just cutting some of the low end out. And finally a Volve compressor, just to tighten the sound up a bit. Next, I'm just going to add a texture underneath it, and then we'll get to the next technique. Whenever I add a texture like this, I always turn the volume all the way down because I hate when there's a really annoying vinyl crackle or something like that in a sample. The third technique I'm going to talk about is actually learning the piano. In the past, I've felt like, oh, I don't need to learn the piano. I can just click the notes in. I feel like learning the piano to at least some extent can massively help you. I've found it's made me much more consistent in making samples. I found it much more hands-on and much more enjoyable, to be honest. There's actually a few little tips and tricks that I can give you guys to help you learn the piano more quickly and without having to learn every single scale and every single chord, etc. So I mentioned this early on in the video that C minor is the scale that I know the best. This is something I recommend all you guys do, is to learn one scale on the piano really well, or at least have a good knowledge of it. So that would mean going up and down the keys super comfortably in the scale so you can play counter melodies. Now you might think, well, what if something's in a different scale and I can't use the scale that I know? I'm going to show you a little technique that I use, which means you can stick to your scale and play it in your scale, but it'll actually be in a different scale. I've got a sound loaded up in Analog Lab. What I'm going to do is go to the settings knob over here and then change this on the piano down here, which changes the root note. So we're in F sharp minor. I'm going to set it to F sharp. You just right click on it. That means when I'm playing the notes in C minor, it's going to be playing them in F sharp minor. So I can feel super comfortable in playing a scale that I know whilst I'm in a completely different scale in this sample. So let's just mess around and see if I can come up with a counter melody. As you guys saw, that made it super easy for me to lay down a counter melody in a scale that I don't know. Now, essentially, that's kind of the same as me clicking the MIDI, as in, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just kind of freestyling and seeing what happens. But because it's much more hands-on, like I said, it's much more enjoyable. And I feel like it's much quicker in terms of coming up with things. When you're clicking MIDI, you have to click it, then delete it. And it just kind of becomes a bit tedious. So let's just mess around. I want to shorten these a little bit, add a bunch of reverb, some delay to it too. So first things first, let's add the reverb. Next is the delay. I'm going to keep it single because I want to keep it kind of mono. I'm going to put 1/8. Let's bring the feedback up. Wow and flutter down. Let's bring the EQ down a little bit. Let's bring the mix up because I want it to be kind of heavy. Next, I'm adding a good Hertz low-hi just to cut some high end off. And finally, I'm adding a cassette. I just want to make it a bit more crunchy and distorted. For the final technique, I'm going to start a new sample, but what I'm going to do first is bounce out that counter melody we just made and put it in my stack stash folder. I'm in the same FLP. I'm going to use the same sounds, but just create a new sample just to show you guys this final technique. So let's go to my stack stash, synths, and then this one, beat block 80 F sharp minor. So this final technique is starting with a counter melody. It could be a texture, it could be drums, whatever you want, but start with something that you can drop in into your FLP and just get your creative juices flowing. I used to be very heavy set on starting everything from scratch by myself, no additional extra things. But if you can't come up with anything, this is a really great way to spark your brain into coming up with new ideas. So first I'm going to pitch it down to C minor and let's just freestyle some keys over this counter melody, see what I can come up with. You guys just saw how quick and easy it was for me to come up with a chord progression, completely different, but with exactly the same sounds and even the same counter melody as the previous sample. But the point of this video was just to show you guys those few techniques that you can use to overcome beat block, overcome sample block. Everyone gets it, but I feel like if you have a few ways to overcome it, it's going to help your productivity massively. And yeah, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and a comment. Let me know what you want to see next, and I'll see you in the next one.